Winter has a way of swallowing sound. The cold thickens the air, the dark spreads earlier, and that's when people start noticing things they shouldn't. Footsteps in snow that lead nowhere, breathing behind frozen windows, shapes that stand still for hours, just waiting for someone to look back. Tonight, you'll all hear 4 winter horror stories told in the first person by the people who live them. No embellishment, no cinematic monsters, just the supernatural slipping quietly into real, ordinary moments during the coldest nights of the year. Before we start, make sure you're somewhere warm, the lights are low, and if you want more stories like these, subscribe and leave a like. It helps this channel survive the dark. Let's begin. I grew up in northern Minnesota, where winter feels less like a season and more like a presence. The cold doesn't just surround you, it seeps into your clothes, your walls, your thoughts. Last year, during the coldest week of January, I was house-sitting for my aunt while she visited family downstate. Her home sits on a narrow road, surrounded by tall pines that block most of the moonlight. At night, the whole place feels suspended in this muted, frozen quiet. The first 2 nights were normal. I worked remote from her dining table, kept the fireplace going, and listened to the wind skate across the windows. The third night is when everything changed. It started with a dull thump on the porch around 1 a.m. I figured it was ice falling from the roof, but something about it made me pause. It wasn't random. It had a rhythm, almost like someone putting their weight on an old wooden step. I checked the porch light through the window. Nothing. But when I turned the light off again, I swear I saw a faint outline of a figure at the edge of the driveway, perfectly still, facing the house. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor, but nobody walks this road at night, especially not during a cold snap when temperatures drop to double digits below zero. And nobody stands still in weather like that. I looked again, focusing on the shape. It was tall, lean, no visible face, just this dark silhouette, barely separated from the tree line. I backed away from the window and told myself I was just tired. But a few minutes later, the thump came again, heavier this time. A little closer, not on the porch, on the side of the house. My aunt had motion cameras set up. I opened the app on my phone. 3 cameras were online. The 4th, the one pointed at the driveway, was showing a red error message. Signal lost. I tapped it again. Same result. Anxiety chewed up any hope that this was just a coincidence. Around 1:20 a.m., I heard soft crunching in the snow outside the living room. Slow, deliberate. If you've lived through real winters, you know the difference between snow settling, branches snapping, and footsteps. These were footsteps. I didn't look out the window this time. I didn't want to see how close the figure had gotten. I called 911. The dispatcher told me a patrol car would be there in about 30 minutes depending on road conditions. 30 minutes felt like a lifetime. While I waited, the house made a series of noises ID never heard before. Quiet tapping along the siding, a faint dragging sound near the back door, a sharp crack on the window frame, like something flicking it with a fingernail. At some point, the tapping stopped. The dragging stopped. Everything stopped. And then, 3 slow knocks on the front door. Not pounding. Not aggressive. Just patient, measured, like whoever was out there knew I was listening. I grabbed my phone again, and with every ounce of courage I had left, checked the living room camera facing the entryway. The live feed showed the porch empty, but at the very edge of the frame was a shadow stretching toward the door. Too long for a human. Too still. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knocks came again, then a third time, and then silence. By the time the police arrived, whoever or whatever had been outside was gone. But they found something in the snow. Leading from the tree line to the side of the house were footprints, bare footprints. A full-grown adult, barefoot, in sub-zero weather. And the strangest part, the prints stopped halfway across the driveway. Not faded, not buried, stopped, like the person simply vanished. The officers tried to rationalize it. Maybe the prints got filled in by drifting snow. Maybe someone ran back into the woods, but I could tell they didn't believe their own explanations. I didn't stay another night. I packed my things and left before the sun came up. My aunt called me the next day after reviewing her camera logs. The offline camera came back in the morning. The last clip before it went dark showed the driveway, and that tall, lean figure standing just inches from the lens, motionless, staring into the camera, until the feed cut to black. Wow, that was a powerful story. How did you manage to look at the cameras? I would never do that. The isolation, especially in winter, is the perfect setting for these supernatural encounters. There's no other explanation. You noticed the same detail I did, didn't you? Bare footprints don't survive long in weather like that. For them to stay so clean, so sharp, something else had to be keeping them warm. Comment your theories, human or supernatural, and leave your likes to help us spread supernatural horror. I grew up in northern Minnesota, where winter feels less like a season and more like a force that watches you. The kind of cold that doesn't just sting your skin. It presses on you, holds you still. I always thought the stories about winter creatures were exaggerations told by old loggers. But one night on my way home from work, the road taught me that some winter horror stories have more truth than comfort. I had worked a double shift at a sawmill and left around 11. The forecast warned about a heavy snowstorm, but I needed to get home. My wife was alone with our newborn. The road I took was old, lined with pines so tall and narrow they looked like the ribs of a cathedral, a stretch that popped up often in trucker forums where people shared true horror and real encounters. I used to laugh at that stuff, until that night. The fog came in too fast. Not like drifting clouds, more like it rose up from the ground. My high beams hit the white and bounced back at me. I slowed to a crawl. Just needed to make it through that section. The first sign something was wrong was the silence. My truck always made noise. Engine hum, vibration, that metallic rattle in the glove box. But suddenly, it all stopped. It felt like I'd driven into an insulated chamber of ice where sound couldn't exist. I even tried breathing louder just to hear something. Nothing. The second thing was the footprints. A line of them cut across the road, deep and clear. Too long to be from a wolf. Too narrow to be from a deer. Bare footprints, but huge, almost double the size of a man's. Snow kept falling, but the prints stayed sharp, as if they'd been made seconds before. I adjusted the wheel to avoid them, but more prints appeared ahead, now running parallel to the path I was driving. My body reacted before my brain understood why. The hair on my arm lifted. My throat tightened. It wasn't just fear. It felt like something was looking at me from above. I checked the rearview mirror. At first, only white. Then, just for a split second, something tall moved between my taillights. Too thin to be human. Too tall to be any animal living in those haunted woods. The road worsened. Snow hammered the windshield. I turned on the radio to distract myself. Static. Just static. Then the static pulsed in a steady rhythm like a heartbeat, and a low, metallic voice pressed through the noise. Stop. My chest turned hollow. I gripped the wheel. I didn't stop. The voice came again, closer. Stop. When the road curved, my headlights caught something standing in the middle of the lane. Tall, motionless, completely black except for the face, if it was a face. It looked like cracked ice glowing in a deep blue. The figure didn't walk into the road. It was waiting for me. I slammed the brakes. The truck skidded, snow exploding around me. When I finally stopped, the figure wasn't in front of me anymore. It was at my right window, standing still, watching. I couldn't look at it for more than a second. That broken ice face, it didn't blink, didn't tilt. It just existed, inches from the glass. Instinct took over. I threw the truck into reverse and hit the gas. The figure didn't chase me. It stayed there, shrinking in the whiteout as I backed away. But the blue glow of its face stayed visible far longer than it should have. The engine sputtered back into normal noise. The radio cleared. The world snapped into place again. When I got home, my hands shook so badly, I dropped the keys twice. To this day, whenever a blizzard grows too thick and the snow looks more like smoke than weather, I see that blue glow between the trees, motionless, patient. Some true scary stories don't want to be told. They just want you to remember who owns certain winter roads. And once you see the Black Ice Man, he doesn't forget you. This story is exactly what the deep winter can show us. You noticed, didn't you? Encounters like this always begin the same way. Not with a creature, not with a sound, but with the absence of one. People think winter is empty, but it's not. It's full of things that thrive in stillness. What you saw on that road wasn't trying to chase you. It was checking if you belonged there. And you walked right into its territory without realizing it? What do you think, my friends? Comment if you've ever been in this situation on the road in winter. Share and like the video to spread the message. I used to think winter only changed landscapes, not people. But after what happened at my uncle's cabin, I don't trust my own senses anymore. Not after learning that something in the cold can mimic you better than your own reflection. It started 2 winters ago, right after New Year's. I had broken up with someone, work was falling apart, and my uncle insisted I borrow his cabin for a week. Good place to clear your head, he said. Most true scary stories start with someone ignoring good instincts, and I guess mine was thinking solitude would help. The cabin sat near a frozen lake, surrounded by heavy spruce trees. The kind that made you feel watched even before the sun went down. But it was quiet, calm, and the first night actually felt peaceful. The second night didn't. Around 3 a.m., I woke up because I thought I heard breathing. Not mine, something slower, deeper. I sat up on the couch, listened. The cabin was old, so I tried to convince myself it was just the wood settling. But then it came again. A long inhale, a longer exhale. I held my breath to compare. The sound continued, steady, as if another person was sharing the room with me. I turned on the lamp. The breathing stopped instantly. Too instantly. I checked the bedroom, the kitchen, even outside the front porch. Nothing. No tracks in the snow. The night swallowed every bit of warmth, thick enough that even the air felt solid. I went back inside, locked all the doors, and left the lights on. The next morning, I found something strange near the back window. A handprint, but not from a glove or a bare hand. The print looked stretched. 5 long marks, thin as branches, pressed into the frost on the glass. I wiped it away, pretending it was mine from the night before. But my hand didn't match. That evening, wind pushed snow across the lake like drifting smoke. I stayed inside, trying to read. Hours passed. Then, while staring at the page, I realized something was wrong. I was breathing, but the sound didn't match my rhythm. There were 2 patterns in the room now. Mine, fast, unsettled, and the other, slow, patient, too controlled. I whispered, "Hello?" Stupid, I know, but silence felt worse. The moment I spoke, the breathing moved, not closer, not farther, just shifted, as if whatever it was changed position. Without footsteps, without weight, I grabbed my phone. No signal. I turned on the radio. Static. Then, underneath the static, I heard something that turned my blood to ice. my own breathing pattern, playing back to me. At first, I thought it was an echo, but the sound wasn't delayed. It was synchronized, like something was copying the exact rise and fall of my chest in real time. I ran outside into the snow, desperate for open space. My breath shot out in clouds, uneven and panicked. But behind me, from the cabin doorway, came another cloud of breath, tall, towering, much larger than mine. I didn't see its body, just the vapor in the air, too high to be a person, too dense to be natural. I sprinted toward the frozen lake. The wind howled and the snow stung my face, but I kept going until my legs gave out. When I turned back, the cabin lights flickered. Then, slowly, they went out one by one. Like someone or something walked through each room. I hid near the tree line until sunrise. When I finally returned, the inside of the cabin was freezing. The air felt wrong, like stepping into someone else's lungs. On the wall near the front door, drawn into the frost, were the same long finger marks I'd seen before. But this time, they traced the shape of a person standing perfectly still. And right where the mouth would be, the frost had melted into a small circle, like something had stood there, breathing. I left without packing anything. My uncle never found tracks or signs of an intruder. He thinks stress made me imagine it. But sometimes, when I'm lying in my own bed now, I hear it again, a slow inhale that doesn't belong to me. And I wonder if whatever was in that cabin didn't mimic my breath to scare me. I wonder if it learned it so it could follow. What do you think? Wow, that got me. Hearing your own breathing coming from somewhere else is bizarre. Stress can play tricks, but mimicking your breathing? I don't think so. Well, I would have left the first time. Nothing good could come of it. Comment what you thought, and leave your likes to spread the message. And subscribe for more terrifying videos. I used to be a volunteer search and rescue worker. Most of the calls were routine. Hikers caught in storms, lost campers, the usual nature humbling someone who thought they were invincible. But there's one case we never entered into the official reports. The kind that becomes a true scary story only the team whispers about. It happened 5 winters ago on a forest trail near Mount Oswin. Every December, people claimed the area felt wrong. Echoes carrying too far, cold pockets in warm air, and once in a while, someone heard a child crying under the snow. I never believed those stories. Not until the night we were called to look for a missing 12-year-old girl, Hannah Navarro. We headed out at dusk. The wind made that thin, high sound that always means the temperature is about to drop fast. I took point down the haunted trail, sweeping my flashlight across the trees. Everything looked normal, but the forest was too quiet. I kept waiting for the crunch of a branch or the distant call of an owl. There was nothing. 2 hours into the search, we found the first sign. Hannah's scarf, caught on a dead branch, frozen stiff like a strip of metal. The snow beneath it looked unusual, smooth and perfectly undisturbed. No footprints, no drag marks, just nothing. Maybe the wind covered the tracks, someone said. But the snow around us told a different story. Our prints stayed visible for long minutes before filling in. Whatever took her left no trace at all. We kept moving. Then the crying started. It came from deep below us, not ahead, not behind, under the snow. A small, trembling voice repeating the same phrase. "Please, it's cold. Help me." We all froze. The sound wasn't muffled like someone married. It was clear, close, too close. One of my teammates dropped to his knees and started digging with his gloves, frantic. Snow flew in every direction. Nothing was beneath it, but more snow and dark soil. The crying grew louder, and then it stopped, just cut off. I leaned closer to the ground, trying to calm my breathing. The air pushing out of the hole was warm. warm enough to fog my face. Warm air shouldn't rise from frozen ground. Winter doesn't work like that. We reported the sound over the radio. Command told us to push deeper into the forest toward the frozen creek. That's when things turned worse. We found Hannah standing in a clearing, but something was wrong. She wasn't shivering. No frostbite, no crying. Her clothes weren't torn. She stood perfectly straight, arms at her sides, eyes open but unfocused, like she was listening to something far away. I approached slowly. "Hannah, it's okay. We're here." She didn't blink. She didn't even look at me. She just whispered, barely moving her lips, "It's underneath." Before we could ask anything else, she turned her head toward the snowbank beside us. Not gradually, but sharply, like her neck had been guided. Then the ground beneath that snowbank shifted, not like an animal burrowing, more like something rising. The snow cracked. A long, thick fracture line opened across the clearing. The air coming through it was warm again, the same warmth from the hole we dug earlier. My teammate grabbed Hannah and pulled her back. She didn't resist, didn't react, just kept staring at the widening crack. The forest felt like it was holding its breath. Then something pushed against the underside of the snow. A silhouette, human-shaped, small, pressing upward like someone trying to surface from icy water. I should have helped. I should have dug. But I recognized the shape. It wasn't Hannah. It was the same size, but wrong. The proportions were off. The limbs too thin, the head too smooth, and worst of all, it breathed. Long, slow breaths that lifted the snow in perfect rhythmic rises. The exact same breaths we had heard earlier. When the snow finally collapsed inward, revealing only black earth beneath, the silhouette dissolved. Like it had sunk back down. Hannah finally blinked. Then she screamed. Not like a scared child, like someone waking from a nightmare they'd been forced to watch. We carried her out immediately. She survived, but she never explained what happened. Doctors called it shock, trauma, exposure. But whenever someone mentions winter storms, she covers her ears. And whenever the ground freezes too early, she refuses to step outside. As for me, I learned something that night. Snow isn't always a blanket. Sometimes it's a door, and something under it is always listening. Wow, what a powerful story. Children never say things like that unless someone or something has taught them. Most people think winter buries things, but that's only partly true. It also preserves them, keeps them in place, gives them time. And time is exactly what things under the snow need to understand human patterns, especially children's voices. Congratulations on your work, because we know the value of it. You save lives, and that's spectacular. You watching, tell me what your action would be in this situation. How would you react? Leave it in the comments. Hi, my friends. Winter has a way of hiding things we're not meant to understand. Footprints that appear without a source. Voices rising from frozen ground. Shapes that wait just outside the edge of the light. Every story you heard tonight came from someone who thought winter was harmless until it showed them what really survives in the cold. If any of these encounters stayed with you, even for a moment, that's good. Fear is a warning, not a weakness. And the next time you hear breathing in an empty room, or notice silence settling too quickly, remember, winter listens back. If you want more stories like these, hit the like button, subscribe, and keep the channel growing. It helps more than you think. And don't leave just yet. On the final screen, you'll find 2 more true horror stories waiting for you. Choose one, because the night is not over yet.